All right, this week on the tutorial we are putting together the dressing to go with last week's turkey. Stay tuned and see how easy this is to do. Alright, so we're starting our project today by making our casserole dish, and for that we need some clay. My favorite clay for using, well, I use it for all kinds of things, but to make things that are supposed to be like ceramic, glass, stoneware, that type of thing, I like a mix that's 50% translucent, 50% white. So equal parts of the two clays. And I always have a bag of that on hand in my clay stash. I use it that much. I'm just dusting my work surface here, my tile, with some cornstarch. That way this won't stick quite as bad. And I've got my clay roller and I've got 2 jumbo craft sticks. I'm using these for a thickness guide. That way I can roll this out, and I'll probably do most of this rolling off camera because it's going to take me a while. I need to get this down to the same thickness as these 2 sticks by having one on each side of my clay, and make sure they're on one on each side, and rolling until my roller hits the wood. I know that my clay will be a consistent thickness throughout. So I'm going to turn the camera off, get this rolled out. When I've got it rolled out to an even thickness, I'll be back and we'll go on to constructing our dish. Alright, this is now an even thickness. So I have just a standard craft stick. And I'm just using this because I need to have a nice straight strip of clay to use as my sides on my dish. And this is a good height for it. So pick something that's about the right size, and I'll put the size of this. I'll try to remember to put a notation at the bottom of the screen. If not, I'll have it in the blog post. Get that up, and I'm going to get this out of my way because I don't want to damage it. Now, I have this, but I want to make my base of my casserole dish 3 layers thick for a couple of reasons. Number one, it will make my dish much stronger, and it will be easier to keep the sides straight. Also, I don't have to mix so much stuffing to put inside of it. All right, I'm going to make sure that this is coming off of my tray, and now I'm going to, and if you have something like a dowel or something that you can form this on that's 3/4 of an inch, that would make this a lot easier. I can't find anything today, so I'm having to do this without a form. I tried several things and nothing was the right size. I'm going to make that a straight line. That's going to be the inside. There's a line there, so I'm going to turn this around and make this the inside. All right. Now, I want to make sure that this is lined up with the bottom of my disc. And I think because this is fairly soft, I am going to move this into the freezer for about 15 minutes to get this a little more firm, so it'll be a little easier to work on. Once it's a little more firm, I'll come back and we'll do the next step. All right, now that this is nice and cold, it's much firmer, and I am much less apt to stick a fingernail into it. So now I'm going to add a little bit of decoration to it. I've got a toothpick here. Ignore the dried paint on the end of it. And I thought what I would do, and don't worry, I won't make you watch me do the whole thing. I'm just going to go around. I'm going to try to evenly space these. They're not going to show a lot, but they'll just add a little texture to it, and they will disguise any little creases I've made in the clay. If it starts to wobble too much as I'm doing this, I'll go ahead and put it back in the freezer for a few minutes, about 5 probably, and come back and work on it some more. When I've gone all the way around, in fact, I should probably put you down a little closer so you can see what I'm doing there. I know you guys can see better when I have the camera down like this, but it's a lot harder for me to stay under camera because my space to work in is so small. So I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to go all the way around, and then I'm going to set up for the next step, and I'll be back. All right, I've gone all the way around, and I've got this. I'll have to straighten the sides up a little bit just before I put it in the oven. But now I want to add some color to this. I'm going to back you guys up so I don't knock you out of the screen here. But I found the darkest blue chalk that I have in my chalks, and I love it when I get to use these colors I can't use on food. I mean, when was the last time we used a blue chalk on food? But we can use it in here. Now, always have a wet wipe on hand when you're working with something like this. And I've got a piece of wood here. This is just one of those wooden plant pots that will help me to hold this so that I hopefully will not get chalk inside of it. I've got my brush I use. You could use any color you want. Since the dollhouse that I'm currently working on, the beachside bungalow, is done with a lot of blues, I thought this would be a really pretty color. And it's a color I very seldom get to use since I generally use the chalks when I make food. Once in a great while we get to do something where we get to use these fun colors. So I'm going to put a nice even coat. And then after I've got this all the way around, I'm going to double check that my casserole dish is nice and straight. A little more here on this side. All right, there we go. So I am going to put this on a paper plate. I'm going to bake it at 275 degrees for about 10 minutes. This doesn't need to be completely cured. We just need it cured enough that it will remain stable and that the blue will not come off on anything else as we're working. So I'm going to go do that and then I'll be back. All right, so this is baked. Now that blue is permanently on there, so we don't have to worry about it coming off, and we can go on to making what's going to go inside our dish. So I'll just grab the clay here. So I've got a couple of pieces of clay that I'm going to use. I have some Sculpey 3 in this is called Camouflage. What we want is kind of a green, leaf green camouflagey color, and this one is, I haven't used much of it, but it's been sitting for quite some time. So I'm going to back in here some of it, and I'm only going to bake off. I'm not going to bake a whole lot, but I need enough that I can safely hold on to this and grate it, because what we're going to do, make myself a little handle here, and I'm going to bake that off and put some bits there. I'm going to do the same thing with excuse me, I'm losing my voice again, with some, I believe this is Sculpey 3 in moss. Yeah, this is Sculpey 3 in moss, and I want even less of this one. But I want to make it so it's kind of shaped like that so that I can grate it on a grater safely. And then the majority of what we're going to use is going to be, I've got some Female Classic in Champagne, and I hope this color is still available. I think it is, but I'm not positive. And what I'm going to do, I'm not even going to work with this other than to make sure my knife is the right direction, which it's not. I'm going to cut off about that much, and probably again. And I'm going to get some of this reddish brown, like I use quite often when I'm making bread, and I'm trying to figure out where I put my brush. Oh, there, is that it? I think I see it over there. For this, I might just use my finger. I don't see my brush. We want to get this on one side of this. I'm going to get some brown also. It doesn't have to be done as completely as we do like when we make a bread, but we want a similar coloring. Get some brown also. Because this will allow me to chop this up, and some bits will look like they've got a crust on them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take these pieces of clay, I'm going to bake them off at 275 for probably about 5 minutes, and then while they're still warm, I'll come back and we'll do the next step. All right, I literally just took these out of the oven and set this down here so I could work with it, because this next step is much better if the clay is warm. Unfortunately, it's also kind of painful. Now what I've got here is basically a cheese grater that I picked up at the dollar store. This one is only to be used for clay. Once you use it for clay, don't use it for food. I'm going to take that green, and I'm going to very carefully, without grating my fingers, use the finer holes, and it's fairly small. We don't need a lot of the green, and if it breaks up, that's okay. Little crumbles are fine. And that's why we didn't bake this very long, and why we want to work with it while it's still warm. So that's that part. I've got the darker green. Ah, that's hot. That's warm. Be careful you don't grate your fingertip. I swear these things are made by the Band-Aid people. All right, and that's probably way more green than I need. Now I've got these pieces, and I want to do this on the bigger holes, which is going to go easier. And I'm kind of going at an angle. Those are burnt. And I don't know if I mentioned, I'm doing this on top of a piece of parchment paper so that I can. Yeah, I think I'm going to chop up some of this. I'm going to see if I can chop some of this fine enough with my blade so I don't have to shred this one. I'm hoping that you were seeing what I was doing there. Can I? Use the knife the right direction. I'm trying to cut this, and every couple of cuts look up at the camera to make sure I haven't drifted out from under the screen. After all these years of doing YouTube, I still have trouble staying under the camera. You can chop this, as long as it's pretty fine, chopping these would be fine. I'm going to turn the camera off and get this all chopped up to where it's little tiny pieces like these, and when I get those done, I'll come back and I'll show you the next step. All right, now I have enough of this chopped up fine enough that we can use it. So what we're going to do is, and I won't need all of this, I am going to scoop some of this into my bowl. I am measuring right now. this is just going to tell me how much I'm going to need. You see, by filling in the bottom, I'm going to try for some of the smaller pieces. I got tired of chopping, so I'm going to put some of these, the mixed green parts in. Some of these little tiny pieces. Oops, try not to spill it. Hopefully I'm getting this under camera for the most part. All right, I'm going to push this all off to the side, probably on that. You see, we did a lot more than we needed, but that's good because we'll probably sprinkle some more on top here in a little bit. So that's about what I need to work with this. So now I've got some aluminum foil, and I need a toothpick, and I need some oil paints. Now, we're going to color some transparent liquid sculpey. So for that, we need a oil paint. That's the only time you use oil paint with polymer clay is when you are coloring your TLS. So I'm going to squirt out a pool here. That's hopefully enough, and hopefully I can not overdo the brown. So this is a burnt umber oil color, and I'm just going to get just enough, not even that much, about that much, just enough to color the end of my toothpick. Is probably plenty. We just want to make this kind of a beigey color, kind of brownish. There. Now, I'm going to drop that down in there. We know it's the right amount because we've already measured it. Now remember, the TLS will not be white when it's done. It will turn a more clear color, more translucent. It won't be clear, but it will be translucent. I'm trying to look down into this without getting my head in front of the camera. So forgive me if I get my head in your way. All right, now I'm going to grab just a little bit more. I'm going to sprinkle some green on. Sprinkle a few of these pieces of our bread. I want that one to be turned over because that one had a nice brown side. There, sideways. There. And I just want to sprinkle in a few pieces that will be sticking out. Not you. You do not belong in there. Yes, I talk to my clay quite often. My son used to laugh at me for that when he was at home. And be sure you wash your hands after you do this because, as you can see, I have chalk and all kinds of gunk all over my fingers. So there, I think that's a pretty good bowl of stuffing. Now, if you want to put a serving spoon into this, this is the time to do it. If you have a plastic one, I would suggest trying to find like a toothpick or something and put in there something to make a hole. Or you can drill a hole with a Dremel later very carefully if you want to put in something plastic. But as long as you got something that is not going to melt in the oven, this is the time to put it in. So I am going to bake this at 275, probably for about 30 minutes because I think there's more than a 1/4 inch there. I want to make sure this is baked. In fact, I'm going to bump the temperature down to 250 and bake it for 30 minutes. And when that's done and it's all the way cooled, I'll come back and we'll go to the next step. All right, this has baked and cooled, so I'm going to put some Mod Podge on this. And what I've got here is I've got some poster tack. I'm using one of those craft sticks that I use to level out my clay, because this way I can pick this up and not touch the parts that I'm going to be Mod Podging. I don't make a mess. So I've got gloss Mod Podge, and if you followed my channel for very long, you know I'm not a huge fan of gloss Mod Podge on clay, but I do want the base to be shiny, so I've just put just a tiny bit out on there. Now another thing, if you're not a regular viewer, I try to never put my brush into my container of Mod Podge, because that is an invitation to disaster if you transfer. Like, even though this is in theory permanent, now that it's on here, I could pick up something and contaminate my bottle of Mod Podge. I waste a lot less here than if I were to do that. Now, I'm not going to make you watch me do the whole thing, because we've all done this. The secret to Mod Podge is thin coats. If you put it on too thickly, not only does it not only does it have more of a tendency, especially gloss, to remain sticky, it also has more of a chance of getting cloudy. So I want to put on a very, very thin coat. I'd rather use 2 thin coats than 1 thick coat. So I'm going to go around, I'm going to get this, I'm going to very carefully, off camera, go around the edge, because I want to move it up to my face, so I make sure I'm getting it where I want it. I don't want to get gloss Mod Podge on the stuffing. So when this is done and dried, I'll come back and we'll go on to the next step. All right, now this is dry and I love how it looks. I do see I got my dish a little crooked, but it's fine. I can be careful how I put it. So let's put some finish on the top, and that's going to do 2 things. Number one, I'm going to use matte Mod Podge. It will give just a little bit of shine, not much. That's why I'm using matte. I don't want it too wet or greasy. It will also help to seal in any of the little pieces of clay that didn't get sealed in. And for this, I'm going to use kind of a beat up brush. I don't want to use one of my really good brushes, because I want to dab in, and I may damage the end of the brush. This one is kind of spread out already, so it works really well for doing this kind of application. And matte doesn't get sticky like the gloss does. The glossier your Mod Podge, the more apt it is to get sticky. So matte is least apt to, satin's not bad, and glossy, in my experience anyway, tends to stay sticky sometimes. All right, I am going to let that dry, and then I will come back and we will look at the finished dish of stuffing. All right, our Mod Podge is all dry, and I love how this, that has that perfect gloss to it, just like a real casserole dish. I love this. It turned out just the way I wanted it to. If you enjoyed today's content, be sure and hit the like button. Leave me a comment. If you want more details, be sure and follow the link in the description box to my blog post. There will be some photos. I will give the measurements and some of the other details over there, and I'll list the colors that I used and everything. If you enjoy my content and you haven't subscribed, push the subscribe button and the notification bell so you know that when I put up a new video, and I will talk to you next time. Bye for now.